And right here at KSMO Radio, it's time for our interview with our friends from the Dent County Extension and the MU Extension. We have Katie with us this morning. Katie, you there?
Yes.
How you doing today?
Great.
Getting any rain in your area, Katie?
No, the drought just keeps getting worse and worse.
I'm telling you what. Yeah, we've got a few sprinkles coming through the area. We'll take whatever we can get, but there's been a lot of the areas of the state of Missouri that are absolutely not getting any rain whatsoever, especially the northern half. They are really dry, aren't they?
They sure are.
So one of the things we're going to talk about today is watering and smart watering, right?
Yes. So when we get into drought conditions, we have to, if you're a plant person like me, you have to think about how can we water efficiently in order to help our plants survive. And when we get into very severe drought, sometimes it's picking what we are going to water. So we also have to think about water conservation, not only because there are other things that besides our plants that need it sometimes, depending on how severe the drought is.
And I've heard a lot of times there's a good timing element too when you want to water. You don't want to water in the heat of the day, right?
No, you do not. Early morning or late evening. And honestly, we really want to water at the base of the plants. Okay. We don't want to get the plant foliage wet. One advantage to having a drought, and actually we really haven't had much humidity, is that we don't have many plant diseases. So if we get our plant leaves wet, then we increase the possibility of plant diseases. So water at the base, that's where we want the water to go, so the plant roots can get it.
And plants are pretty durable, but one of the things you probably don't want to do, and I've heard this said before too, is a lot of people think, well, I need to give them some plant food because they're really going to need that, and then they go out there and water it, and at this time that might actually put a strain on that plant, couldn't it?
It sure can. If a plant is stressed, wilted, whatever, it does not need fertilizer. It just needs that water.
I think we all need that water, no doubt about it. You know, and I know a lot of people want to go out there and they want to keep their lawns really looking good, but you know, there's just got to be a little bit of common sense when you need to conserve water at the same time. But also, it's not going to do a lot of good to get out there and water that ground because it really needs a good soaking rain, doesn't it?
Yes. Because unless you have a specific setup, that it's extremely hard to get enough water out there to do lawns. And honestly, the lawn, basically, if it's a cool season grass, it goes dormant. Right. So my lawn is definitely dormant right now. I really don't miss mowing, honestly. So I hadn't mowed in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I hit a couple high spots along the highway where I guess it gets the moisture runoff that was a little greener. And I don't anticipate, unless we finally get some rain, that I'll be mowing anytime soon.
But let's talk a little bit about the stress of plants, though, because you'll see trees stressed. They'll drop some leaves when they do get stressed out a little bit. That's just normal. And people start to get a little panicky when that starts to happen, don't they?
They sure do. So trees will drop leaves because they're shedding some of their load, basically. Okay. They typically survive. However, drought is a stress, and multiple years of stress, depending on type of tree, age of tree, and I always say trees have lifespans, just like humans do. So sometimes trees don't make it, but shedding some leaves isn't too big of a concern, and I have noticed in our area that there are some that are starting to shed some leaves.
I've often been told that if the tree is like 10 to 15 years old, the root system is usually deep enough that it'll get stressed, but it should survive because it can find water with that root system. But if it's about 3 or 4 years old, the roots aren't deep enough yet, are they?
Sure. For sure. Age of tree really does make a difference. And the site that it's on, in our Ozark areas, sometimes our soils aren't very deep and we have lots of rocks. So that can also contribute to how much water is available.
Yeah, that rock soil doesn't do a lot of good, does
yes.
it?
Although plants are an amazing thing, because I often think when I see those trees going out of those rock bluffs, they can survive in some pretty crazy spots.
And we're not even normally even at the hottest part of the summer yet. Usually that's late July and through August, right?
Yeah, and these temperatures I guess starting tomorrow again. Sunday, of course, was miserable, and then we added a hot wind on top of that.
But Monday was great. Monday was nice.
The breezes feel good for us, but that also adds to the drying of removing any more moisture.
Well, it does, and people don't think that very much when they say, "Oh, that breeze feels good." Well, that breeze is a north wind. There's not usually a lot of moisture to it. Moisture is going to come out of the south.
Yep.
And when you get that north wind, it feels comfortable, but it is drying out those grasses, plants, trees, everything else, and adding to a little bit of the stress. But so here we go. We're getting ready to go into July, Independence Day, and then here comes what we normally would call our 6 weeks of pretty much dry weather. What can people do? Can they figure out some kind of plan to keep their plants safe during this time?
So it's do what you can, and my number one tip on watering would be to water deeply and infrequently. So if you water, basically putting out water, if it's a plant in the ground, once a week, and let that water filtrate through the soil so the plant roots grow after it. If you do a little bit every day, that water stands next to the surface, and so do our plant roots, and that's really not very helpful to them. They need to send those roots deep so they can start foraging some of their own water down deeper, and it conserves water that way also.
How about vegetable gardens that people might need, or even fruit trees? Is there a different way that people should address those?
So vegetable gardens, same way. Okay. I do recommend like soaker hoses or drip irrigation, and in vegetable gardens, mulch. Mulch can conserve a lot of moisture, so what you're putting down can stay there if we mulch it, because that creates that barrier so it doesn't evaporate. And that can really help keep those plants going when we have these drought conditions.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, people in the summertime, they like to go out and do the yard work. I know not when it's 105 degrees, trust me, I know that. But there are times when you want to prune some shrubs and things of that nature. They think, well, I've got time right now. And this is not the time you want to be going and cutting back your shrubs to try and shape them up, is it?
No, because when they are stressed, they're typically not very actively growing. They're just trying to survive. So we really don't want to prune, because pruning encourages new growth, or in this case, they'd be like, okay, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
It's hard on them, so this is not the ideal time to do any pruning.
Usually from May through August is just not a good time to prune at all, right?
Yes. We typically want to think about pruning before there's a flush of new growth, because that's what we want to achieve.
Or when it becomes late fall, you might want to prune it back, because you're not in any
dormant season.
Yeah, you're not in any danger of that new growth.
Yep.
Okay, very good. So there's just a little bit of this is common sense, right?
Yes. And, whatever questions you have, if you have specific questions about that, I'm always available to answer those questions. And while I may not know the answer when you first ask it, I will find out. I have a great network, and then I get to learn something new every day that way.
So what's the number that they can contact you, Katie?
So I'm housed in the St. Genevieve County office, which is 573-883-3548.
Okay, but they can also call our local office at 729-3196.
and they will get a hold of me.
Okay,
So,
very good.
and you can take samples there, and they'll take pictures and send to me. So always happy to help.
Katie, I know some people right now, and I know haying, everybody's got their pretty much hay up, and they're not going to get much more because right now there's just nothing growing.
Yep.
But I know some people keep talking about soil samples. I know a lot of people that have soil samples that take them to our extension here locally. Is this a good time to take a soil sample?
So we don't see as many soil samples in the summer time, but sometimes it is whenever you have that opportunity. Right now, I would have trouble getting a shovel in the ground or a soil probe in the ground. So for me, it wouldn't be ideal. But
our area is a little softer yet, so
yeah, you can take it whenever you need to. The lab isn't quite as busy this time of year. It seems like late winter, early spring is the really busy soil test time. But regardless, we'll still get those results back. And if it's a home or garden one, my name and phone number will be on the bottom to answer questions.
Okay, so when we first came on here, you were asking me about the smoke coming down out of Canada, and there's been a lot of that off and on through a lot of the parts of the northern parts of the United States, and it's trickling down and getting further and further south, and we've got an east wind right now helping that in our area. Is there any danger to that with plants or anything like that nature? Because it is taking oxygen out of the air.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I think it's more of a breathing hazard for us, and I've heard, air quality warnings and different things that way. But it's interesting. This morning, I look out my office window, and typically I can see across into Illinois. This morning, the smoke is enough that I cannot.
Just hovering over the water, isn't it?
Yep.
Almost like a fog, but it's not a fog.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
it almost gives you hope that rain is coming because it has that hazy look, but unfortunately it doesn't sound that way.
Katie, we got the clouds right now, so I know you're envious of that, but
yes,
there's not been a lot of rain out of it, though. Yeah, we had a few sprinkles this morning, and we'll take whatever we can get, but I kind of call them dust razors on your car. You get a few of these drops, and then your car, which looked kind of symmetrical with dust, now has these plops on it. And man, I got to do something. All right, very good. Was there anything else you wanted to pass along to our listeners this morning?
Just be aware and watch the weather, and work on saving those important plants the drier it gets, and use that water wisely.
Very good. So if anybody has any questions, again, they can call our local extension, 729-3196. They can get in touch with you. But if they want to call you directly, give me that number one more time.
It's 573-883-3548.
Katie, as always, we really appreciate you calling in and updating our listeners with some ways of keeping their plants as healthy as possible during this time of drought.
You bet.
We do appreciate you, and you have a very happy Independence Day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Katie. Appreciate you calling. Thank you. Bye. All right, here KSMO, our extension interview with Katie Candler from the St. Genevieve office of the Missouri University Extension System. And we really do appreciate them getting us in touch with us to keep you up to date on some things that you might just be interested in. We are going to come back. Got some Luke Bryan on the way at KSMO Radio in just a moment, right after this.
Hello, my name is Samantha Welch. I'm the new family nurse